I've just flown in from Delhi, which today is a city of about 15 million people, if you count the various suburbs on the edge that have sprung up over the last few years. But had you visited Delhi 150 years ago, this month, July 1858, you would have found that this city, which was for so many centuries the cultural capital of North India, had 150 years ago been left completely deserted and empty. Not a single soul lived in the walled city of Delhi in July 1858. The reason for this was that the previous year, 1857, Delhi became the center of the largest anti-colonial revolt to take place anywhere in the world against any European power at any point in the 19th century. That uprising is known in this country as the Indian Mutiny, is known in India as the First War of Independence. There's the clangers going on outside. What's that? We sound like we've got some science fiction children's program taking place. Anyway, let's see if it continues to amuse us throughout. Where was I? Before the clangers. Neither the Indian Mutiny or the First War of Independence are particularly useful titles. What happened in Delhi was much more than a mutiny of soldiers, because it encompassed almost all the discontented classes of the Gangetic Plains. But it wasn't quite either a national war of independence, as it had rather particular aims of restoring the Mughal dynasty back to power. Now, in the uprising, or the rising, whichever term you want to use, the two institutions which had formed North Indian history for the previous 300 years came to an abrupt and complete halt. In human affairs, dates rarely regulate the ebb and flow of real lives. Historians impose them on history. But in most occasions, life continues despite the events that historians like to demarcate as boundaries. But 1857 to 8 is one of those rare moments that acts like a complete guillotine. Everything in North India that's happening before then comes to an abrupt halt, and everything changes direction. The first of those two institutions which came to a close in 1857 was the East India Company. People talk about the British conquering India, but far more sinisterly, it was not, of course, the British or British government per se, but a multinational trading corporation based here in the city of London, in Leadenhall Street. The East India Company was a company. It existed to create profit for its shareholders. Think Microsoft with armies, or McDonald's with territorial ambitions, and you get a picture. It's the ultimate, really, example of sort of continent-scale corporate irresponsibility. The company, which was founded in 1599, the same year Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, had existed in India for 250 years before the uprising, and a very different set of relations had governed the interface between the merchants from London and the Indians it traded with than was to be the case for the subsequent 90 years of the Raj. When the British think of themselves in India, they think of people in solar topis waving Union Jacks or possibly gunning down people in Jallianwala Bagh. But the Raj is, oddly enough, the kind of bit of the iceberg above the water. It's only 90 years. And the period of the East India Company, which lasted 250 years, is a far more ambiguous and interesting and uncharted bit of history. The other institution which came to a dead halt in 1857 was, of course, the Mughals. The Mughals are one of the few dynasties in the world to have become an adjective. You don't talk about a Hollywood Tudor or a business Plantagenet, but you do talk about a Hollywood Mughal. The word has become synonymous in the English language with power and might and prestige. And the Mughals arrived in India in 1560, only a short period before the British arrived with the company. Babur came from what's now Uzbekistan, Fergana. By clever use of artillery, he defeated the Lodi dynasty, which was the last of a succession of Muslim dynasties that had been in North India since the 12th century. And over a period of generations, they conquered almost all of modern India, all of modern Pakistan, all of modern Bangladesh, most of modern Afghanistan, and a slither of Persia. For the British or the English of the time, what was remarkable about the Mughals, as the adjective implies, was their power and their might. The English arrived in India not as part of some sort of Elizabethan NGO, bringing sort of clean water or good wells or children's aid to India. They arrived as ragged Tudor outsiders with sort of codpieces hanging out and regarded as barbarians by the Mughals, who were the rich, sophisticated magnates of the time. India was the richest country in the world. Today we're beginning again, 60 years after the end of colonialism, to associate India with wealth and entrepreneurship and money and go-ahead policies. But this was very much the reason for the Elizabethan interest in India. It was the silks and textiles of Bengal, the spices of Kerala, and the gold. India had unlimited quantities of gold. It also had the only source of diamonds in the world before the discovery of the New World mines. Now, the Mughals brought all this to fruition, seen most magnificently in buildings like the Taj Mahal or the Indian miniature tradition. But what, in a sense, to us today is most remarkable about the Mughals is the way that they defy almost all the media stereotypes of Islamic fanaticism and the association of Islam with words like terrorism and so on. The Mughals, at a time when here in the city of London, Jesuits were being hung, drawn and quartered for their faith. At a time when in Spain and Portugal, the Inquisition was doing a version of waterboarding to anyone who didn't subscribe to the doctrines of the Catholic Church. At a time when in Rome, Giordano Bruno was being burnt at the stake in Campo de' Fiori. In Fatehpur Sikri, the Emperor Akbar, by far the most interesting and remarkable of the Mughals, was summoning to Fatehpur Sikri Sunni, Shia and Sufi Muslims, Hindus of Shaivite and Vaishnavite persuasion, as well as Hindu atheists, Buddhists from the Himalayas, Zoroastrians and Jains from Gujarat, Jews from Cochin, Jesuits from Goa, all called to the court so that they might sit together and form what is really the world's first multi-religious discussion group, to discover where the different religions of the world could agree, where they differed, and what they might learn from each other. At the end of it, Akbar declared that no man may be compelled in matters of religion. There can be no compulsion in matters of religion, which is a quote from the Quran. And he said that these matters of faith must be decided by reason. Now, at the time, this was a revolutionary concept. There was no similar declaration in Europe for another 250 years, until the time of the Enlightenment. So before one believes the huge, ignorant generalizations of American scholars like Samuel Huntington, or take in the kind of rubbish that one reads in the Daily Mail, or the ignorance of the right-wing press, even the quality press, with people like Michael Gove sounding off about Islam and fanaticism and clashes of civilization. There is much from this period that defies all stereotypes.